My soon-to-be wife has always been a tad too friendly with her guy pal Aaron. Just days before our wedding, she threw a bachelorette bash. And guess who showed up? Aaron. It was supposed to be a girls-only event, but somehow he snagged an invite. And guess what else? I got a text message. Attached was a video of Aaron and my bride-to-be in a hot tub, getting cozy. Want to know what I'm going to do about it? All right, folks, I'm about to spill the beans on the saga that's pretty much wrecked my life at this point. My fiancée Summer and I were all set to tie the knot this weekend. We were head over heels for each other, and everything in our lives seemed picture perfect. We wanted our wedding to be just as flawless. We spent months meticulously planning every detail, making sure everything was just right. But then I discovered something that completely upended my world, and not in a good way. But before I dive into the treachery I had to endure, let me take you back to the beginning of our love story. You deserve a little backstory to fully grasp why I'm so livid right now. Summer and I were like two pieces of a puzzle that fit perfectly. We shared the same hobbies, aspirations, ethics, values, and so much more. It felt like we were made for each other, so we decided to make it official and got engaged. Our relationship was built on a bedrock of trust. I mean, that was the cornerstone of our bond. We both prized honesty and expected loyalty from each other. Frankly, I never had a reason to question Summer's fidelity. I took great pride in the trust we had for each other, often bragging about it to friends and family. I felt it was something worth boasting about. But after what I discovered, I don't think I can claim that right anymore. The trust, the loyalty, everything we had built just shattered like fragile glass. Despite the strong trust in our relationship, there was always one aspect that made me uneasy. It was Summer's relationship with her best friend, Aaron. They've been inseparable since they were kids, around 5 years old, so I get why they're so tight-knit, but their closeness always bothered me. I believe that once you're engaged or married, there should be certain boundaries in place when it comes to close friends of the opposite sex. I understand they share a lot of history, and their bond is purely platonic. But my discomfort was always dismissed as me being insecure about our relationship. I was totally confident in our relationship. Initially, I tried to downplay my discomfort, acting as if it didn't bother me as much as it did. I didn't want to be seen as the guy who couldn't handle his girl having male friends. So, I chose to trust Summer and respect her friendship. But as our relationship progressed, this nagging feeling inside me, the kind that makes your stomach churn, just wouldn't fade away, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. There were moments when I couldn't overlook it, so I decided to have a conversation with Summer about it. I wanted to be open and honest about my feelings because I believed she deserved to know what was going on in my mind. But somehow, she always dismissed my concerns, claiming I was overthinking things. She insisted they were just close friends and reassured me that I had nothing to worry about. She said she saw Aaron as a brother, nothing more. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't being entirely truthful. Or perhaps that's just my hindsight talking, now that I'm privy to the whole truth. But back then, I chose to let it slide, believing she wouldn't deceive me, especially since she knew how I felt about the whole situation. So, we continued with our lives. Our relationship was rock solid, and I didn't want any hiccups to disrupt that. She brought so much joy into my life. She made me feel like happiness was within reach, you know? Life isn't just about existing, it's about finding joy, too. I didn't realize this until she came into my life, and I wasn't ready to let that go over some guy I was uncomfortable with her being friends with. Honestly, our friends often looked to us for relationship advice. They admired our seemingly flawless relationship and were always curious about our secret. We were the kind of couple people aspired to be, the kind that showed the perfect balance of love and respect for each other. We would share tales of our shared adventures, and we'd tell everyone how we celebrated each other's victories, rather than just our own. We were each other's rock during tough times, providing unwavering support. However, our seemingly perfect relationship was about to hit a rough patch. There were underlying issues, and my unease about her bond with Aaron was a constant source of conflict. This led to bouts of frustration and petty arguments. This was a side of our relationship that our friends were oblivious to, and we were glad to keep it that way. No one needed to see the fissures in our relationship. What our friends were also unaware of was that we were on the brink of facing the most challenging ordeal life could throw at us. At this point, I'm not sure we'll emerge as the same picture-perfect couple everyone perceived us to be. The incident occurred just 2 days before our wedding, during Summer's bachelorette party. Though such events are typically girls only, she invited Aaron. I mean, why would a guy be at your bachelorette party, especially one who's been a bone of contention in our relationship? To be fair, she did say I could invite any close female friends to my bachelor party, but I didn't have any that were as close as Aaron was to her. There was only one woman I was close to. Her name was Lillian, my first ever friend. However, things got awkward when she developed feelings for me during high school. Now, we only talk when necessary. Summer met Lillian once and they got along pretty well. Sometimes I'd come home from work to find Lillian at our place, which didn't bother me much. Even though Summer gave me the green light to invite anyone to my bachelor party, I was still irked about Aaron attending her bachelorette party. But I bit my tongue because I didn't want to stir up a fight just days before our big day. I was determined to make the entire week flawless, and was willing to push my discomfort aside to ensure a peaceful week. However, it seemed like Summer didn't share my sentiment, as she did nothing to maintain the peace. Want to know what I discovered? She cheated on me with Aaron at her bachelorette party, the very party she assured me not to fret over because she was just going to have fun and be safe. Clearly, that was too much to expect from her. In the middle of her party, I got a text from an unknown number. The sender was at Summer's bachelorette party, and they sent me a photo of Summer in a swimsuit, locked in a tight embrace with a shirtless Aaron. They were poolside, and the hug looked incredibly intimate. For a split second, I thought they were a couple, until I remembered that Summer was my soon-to-be wife. I was seething the moment I saw the photo. Picture this: seeing your fiancée hugging her male best friend, both of them barely dressed, just 2 days before your wedding. And to top it all off, it was midnight. The situation couldn't be more blatant. It was irrefutable proof of her betrayal. I was thrown into a whirlwind of emotions by Summer's actions. I felt a mix of confusion, anger, and heartbreak. I was swamped by a tidal wave of feelings. My mind was a whirlpool of questions. How could she do this? How long has this been happening? Did she ever truly love me? These questions were spinning in my head, leaving me utterly bewildered. I was struggling to keep my thoughts in order. I tried to calm myself down with some breathing exercises, desperate for answers. But the sender of the text was unknown. If I could just figure out who sent me that photo, I could start to unravel the answers to my questions. But I was in the dark about who sent it. The number was unfamiliar, one I'd never encountered before. I tried to inquire who it was, thinking perhaps it was someone I knew who'd switched numbers and forgotten to inform me. That sort of thing happens, right? But when I asked the sender to identify themselves, they brushed me off, telling me to focus on the treachery at hand from my soon-to-be wife. And boy, did I focus. I spent the entire night meticulously plotting my revenge on Summer. Now I know what you're probably thinking. It's not exactly a normal reaction to immediately start scheming revenge when you discover your fiancé's infidelity. But for me, her actions were a profound betrayal of my trust, something I couldn't just let slide. I also knew that confronting her directly would likely lead to a heated argument, filled with excuses and justifications that I knew would be nothing more than lies. No one just casually hugs a friend like that, especially not in such an intimate setting. But I knew Summer would likely dismiss my concerns, claiming I was overreacting to a brief video clip. If I know her well, she'd likely advise me to keep a level head and not let my feelings get the best of me. Honestly, that's a bit of a bummer. I mean, when I discover her infidelity, I want to react with my heart as much as with my head. So I came up with this whole scheme to regain some control over the situation and make it clear to everyone that I'm not a pushover. I refused to be the casualty of such a disrespectful act. In my mind, I was already on the path to finding closure and reclaiming my dignity. At first, I thought I'd keep my plan simple, just expose her for coming between me and leaking private photos and all. But then it hit me that it might not be enough to quench my thirst for justice. I wanted her to feel the same level of betrayal and pain that I did, even if it meant going a bit overboard. I'm prepared to go that far. I knew I couldn't orchestrate this alone, particularly because my plan required another person's involvement, someone I knew who could lend a hand. So, the next morning, I rang up Lily. We hadn't spoken in a while, but when I spilled the beans about everything that had happened, She was just as taken aback. After all, no one saw this coming from Summer. Lillian was taken aback when she discovered the turmoil brewing in what seemed like a picture-perfect relationship. But being the good friend she is, she decided it was only fair to help me make Summer experience the same heartache she'd inflicted on me. The plan was straightforward. On the wedding day, instead of walking down the aisle to stand at the altar awaiting Summer, I'd be strolling down hand in hand with Lillian by my side. When I shared the plan with Lillian, it felt amazing, like she was my secret ace up my sleeve, ready to be deployed. Now, Lillian is not one to hold back her thoughts, so she did voice some concerns about the potential pitfalls of our plan. But she also recognized my need for closure. So, we sprung into action. The following morning was dedicated to brainstorming and strategizing to ensure our plan wouldn't backfire. After all, I was footing the bill for the wedding, and I didn't want it to turn into a total disaster. I just wanted people to understand what Summer had done, and to realize that I wasn't the villain here. All right, fast forward to the wedding day, and it was a whirlwind of emotions. Picture this. It's the day we've all been waiting for, a day that's supposed to be filled with love and promises of forever. Everyone's buzzing with anticipation, waiting for my grand entrance. But then, plot twist, I walk in with another woman on my arm. Lillian, to be exact. Talk about a jaw-dropper. The music came to a screeching halt, and the room fell into a stunned silence. All eyes were glued on me, and I could practically hear everyone's thoughts screaming, "What on earth is happening?" I saw Summer rush out to the aisle, her dress billowing behind her like a scene straight out of a dramatic film, her expression shifting from confusion to sheer shock. Honestly, watching her heart shatter was tougher than I'd anticipated. I thought it would bring me relief, but it was far from easy. A part of me felt guilty for causing her such pain. I mean, there was no denying that our actions had turned her world upside down, but at the same time, it was hard not to feel vindicated for the emotional turmoil I'd been grappling with. But hey, let's be real. Summer's actions wounded me, and it's tough to stay level-headed when you feel so betrayed. I suppose it's all part of the tangled web that is relationships. Update. First things first, let's discuss the fallout of my plan and Summer's reaction. Even though I compared it to a movie scene, the reactions from our families and friends were far more intense. As she stood there in the middle of the aisle, I could practically see the shock ripple from one person to the next. The gasps, the murmurs, it was all so palpable. Everyone was utterly stunned by what had transpired. One person even suggested that I'd lost my mind and needed to be committed to a mental institution. I didn't take that person's comment to heart, though, because she's very close to Summer, so I understood her perspective. Fast forward to the showdown and face-off between Summer and me. It felt like I was a ticking time bomb, just waiting to go off. All right, if you catch my drift. She barged into my apartment, her eyes a fiery red. It was evident she'd been shedding tears. And while I felt a pang of guilt for being the cause of her tears, I still had feelings for her, I couldn't just sit back and let her trample all over me, right? Summer began labeling me a heartless beast, insisting that I was the one with issues and that I should have communicated if something was troubling me. But here's the kicker. I tried to have that conversation with her multiple times, expressing my concerns, and each time she brushed me off. This is the consequence of her not taking my worries seriously. When I was striving to mend our relationship, she was out there partying, getting all cozy with her so-called best friend Aaron, while they were practically undressed. So, no, I don't feel that guilty anymore because, frankly, she had it coming. At one point, the argument escalated to such a degree that she hurled a lamp at my head. Who does that? I was taken aback because I never pegged her as the violent type. But she essentially proved me wrong at that moment. Things got really intense, so I gave her an ultimatum. Either she could stop throwing a tantrum and we could sleep in separate rooms, or she could hit the road. This lady had the audacity to laugh in my face and storm out, slamming the door behind her, probably running back to that sleazeball, Aaron. I didn't hear a peep from her all night, and deep down, I couldn't help but question if Summer was genuinely in denial. All right, I get it. Maybe she didn't harbor romantic feelings for him, but it was glaringly obvious that Aaron was smitten with her from the start, especially given how handsy he was around her all the time. So how could she dismiss everything in a heartbeat? I even have footage of them in a rather intimate hug, sent by an anonymous source, and she still wouldn't admit to her infidelity. It felt like I was grasping at straws at this point, because there was no way we could revert to our old selves. I had to confront the bitter truth that our relationship had morphed into this pit of insecurity, anger, pain, and distrust, and I had to face the harsh reality that perhaps she wasn't destined to be mine. That doesn't mean I can't make her feel lousy, though, because she shattered me. I spent that night drowning my sorrows in alcohol, ignoring calls from everyone, and essentially disappearing off the grid. For a moment, I felt a sense of relief. It was as if I was enveloped in a protective bubble, immune to any further harm. I'm at a loss for what to do next since Summer hasn't returned home, even after a couple of days. She hasn't even come by to collect her belongings if she's staying elsewhere. For the time being, I'm laying low, avoiding everyone, and pretending I've vanished off the face of the earth because I just don't have the mental stamina to deal with people right now. Update 2. I'm back with another update because, let's face it, my life never seems to run smoothly, does it? After the massive blowout with Summer, she didn't show up at our shared home for nearly a week. I'm not exactly sure, but it's been around 5 or 6 days. Instead of her, the main antagonist of this saga, Aaron, decided to drop by. Honestly, when I opened the door to him, I braced myself for a heated and potentially violent exchange, so I invited him in, not wanting to disturb my neighbors. Our conversation started off surprisingly calm and civil. He attempted to present Summer's perspective, claiming that I was misinterpreting the whole situation. However, it felt like he was minimizing my feelings, refusing to acknowledge the video I'd seen, which suggested their interaction was more than just a friendly hug. Even though I should probably be thankful to him, when I mentioned the video, he didn't immediately blow up at me. Instead, he tried to downplay it, suggesting that I was making a mountain out of a molehill, that I was only scratching the surface, and that nothing untoward was happening. They were just two friends sharing a hug because one of them was about to get married, and Aaron was simply expressing his happiness for her. However, when he started sticking up for Summer, that's when things started to spiral. My emotions were all over the place. On one hand, I was trying to see things from their perspective, but on the other hand, why was he so fiercely defending her? Just looking at him stirred up all my pent-up anger and pain, bringing them to the surface. It felt like I was standing on a volcano on the verge of eruption. From his viewpoint, I had overreacted, but from mine, I had done exactly what was necessary. I had no intention of backtracking on my original plan. I wasn't about to apologize for actions I was compelled to take due to the circumstances. When I laid it all out for him, our conversation spiraled into a heated argument. We began hurling insults at each other, the room was thick with tension, and accusations were being tossed around like hot potatoes. It was evident that neither of us was going to back down. It took a punch to my face and a retaliatory one to his for us to finally grasp that our so-called civil conversation had spiraled out of control. We decided to call it quits, and I asked him to leave. As if that wasn't enough, my best friend Jack, who had been my rock through thick and thin, sent me a message expressing his disappointment. I was taken aback that he couldn't comprehend why I had escalated things to this level, even after I had sent him a detailed text explaining the whole situation and my feelings about it. It stung that he couldn't grasp why I had crossed certain boundaries. But what really got to me was his apparent unwillingness to stand by me. I had counted on him to understand me, so his reaction was a tough pill to swallow. Now, I'm at a loss about what to do next, as it feels like my world is falling apart. But the tables were meant to turn, right? So I can either pull myself together and get my life back on track, or I can continue to make Summer's life a living hell. Update. I'm back with yet another update on my wedding day saga, because for some reason, it just keeps taking unexpected twists and turns. One thing that really resonated with me from my last conversation with Aaron was when he questioned whether I even knew the person who sent the video. He pointed out that it seemed like a crucial detail and that I shouldn't make such a monumental decision based on a video sent by an anonymous person. His point hit home, honestly. I mean, yeah, I see where he's coming from. And I started feeling a pang of guilt for the pandemonium I'd unleashed. So, armed with determination and a bag of Cheetos, I decided to embark on a digital quest to uncover the identity of the mysterious text sender. I tapped into my inner Sherlock Holmes and figured the best approach would be to trace the IP address of the sender and extract their information from it. I'm pretty adept at tracking IP information, having worked as an IT guy for a considerable period. It's a skill I've picked up over the years, so it wasn't a big deal. But as I was doing it, my heart was thumping like a drum. My eyes were practically glued to the screen because I was desperate to know who this person was, and I was on edge. I felt like I was about to let out a scream every time the loading bar appeared. And oh my gosh, you guys can't comprehend the level of shock I experienced when I discovered the identity of the anonymous sender. The digital breadcrumbs led me right to the virtual doorstep of none other than Lillian. Yes, the very same Lillian who accompanied me down the aisle. The same Lillian who consoled me during those tough times and reassured me that I was making the right decision. When I discovered this, I was at a loss as to why she would do this to me. But then it hit me. Maybe she was just trying to watch my back and keep me informed about what was going on behind the scenes, which I should appreciate, right? But then, why did she send the message anonymously? If she was on my side, I needed answers. So I decided to confront her. And you know what I discovered? She had exaggerated the situation because she had feelings for me and believed that Summer was unworthy of a man like me. So, this was her scheme to split us up. I'm devastated by this revelation. I can't believe I got ensnared in this scheme and destroyed the most beautiful part of my life because of someone like Lillian. I'm going to reach out to Summer again, try to make her understand my perspective. But I know I've hurt her. I've shattered her tender heart in a terrible way. Update number 4. So I'm back with another update. This is likely going to be my last one. After this, I don't think there's much left to discuss. After uncovering the truth about the picture, I was consumed by guilt because I essentially wrecked my life based on that image. And not just my life, I wrecked Summer's life too. As soon as I discovered Lillian's deceit, I rang up Summer and laid out the entire situation for her. She vented her anger at me, which I totally get because my actions were extreme. I don't expect her to forgive me instantly, but I did my utmost to convey my feelings so she'd know my apology was sincere. But Summer, understandably wounded and feeling betrayed, needed time to digest everything. She told me that what I did was hard to forgive because it had crushed her self-esteem and trust in me, and those aren't things you can mend easily. However, I was prepared to do whatever it took. Aaron and Jake both had a chat with me about the whole situation. The conversation with Jake was relatively peaceful, and even though he scolded me for my foolishness, it didn't escalate like it did with Aaron. Aaron, on the other hand, was livid. He stormed into my place, yelling at me, hurling all sorts of insults, and even managed to land a punch on my face. I accepted it all without protest, because I knew I had it coming. I pleaded with him to assist me in regaining Summer's trust. I implored him, but he just sneered at me, stating that I'd screwed up too much for him to lend a hand now. While I was anxiously awaiting Summer's decision after our phone conversation, I knew I had to face Lillian. I'd let her off the hook too easily, and I couldn't let her manipulative behavior slide. I hunted her down like a detective and confronted her, pouring out all my pent-up anger and disappointment. I made it clear that her self-centered actions had inflicted tremendous pain and chaos in my life and threatened the joy I'd found with Summer. But it seemed like she was unfazed, as she was still trying to persuade me to date her instead, claiming she could, quote, bring me more happiness than Summer ever could. I was so infuriated by her audacity that I didn't trust myself not to harm her, so I walked away. Now, all I can do is hope that Summer can find it in her heart to forgive my rash actions.